He died 20 years ago, but this morning I got a letter from him. It wasn't forgiveness he sent me. It was a map to the truth I buried. And my son followed it straight into the darkness I once called justice. It arrived on a gray morning, long before the sun remembered how to rise. I thought it was just another envelope until I saw the name written on it. Michael Dunn, a man who'd been dead for 20 years, and beneath his name, a line that froze the air in my lungs. For John Miller, to be opened when the truth finds him. Ethan was in the kitchen pouring coffee when I came in holding the letter. "Who sent that?" he asked, voice still sleepy. I couldn't answer. My hand was trembling, and the envelope felt heavier than paper should. "Dad," he repeated. I swallowed hard. Someone who shouldn't be able to write anymore. The name Michael Dunn had been locked away in a part of me I never meant to revisit. 2 decades ago, he'd been arrested because of a report. I wrote a case that cost him his life in prison. They said it was justice. But deep down, I'd always known something about it never felt right. That morning, as rain traced the window pane, someone knocked on the door. 3 sharp knocks, not rushed, not hesitant, just deliberate. I opened it to find a man in his 30s soaked in rain, his eyes an unsettling mix of exhaustion and purpose. "Mr. Miller." "Yes." He handed me the letter. "He wanted you to have this." "Who are you?" He hesitated. "Let's just say I'm the reason he never stopped writing." Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the rain, before I could ask another word. I stood there for a long time, staring at the trail of wet footprints he left behind. Ethan came over, sensing something was wrong. "Dad, what's going on?" I looked at him, my son who'd always believed his father stood for truth. I couldn't let him see the ghosts that followed me here. Nothing I lied, just an old case. But Ethan's gaze lingered. "You're shaking." "It's just the cold," I said, even though my skin burned with something else entirely guilt. I sat down, placed the envelope on the table, and studied it. The seal was old, cracked, slightly along the edge. My name was written in blue ink, the kind that fades into gray with time. Whoever delivered it had kept it safe for years, maybe decades. I opened it carefully. The scent of aged paper filled the room, that dry, bitter smell of forgotten truth. The first line was simple. "If you're reading this, John, it means I'm already gone. But not everything died with me." I felt the world tilt for a moment. Ethan noticed my silence. "Dad, who's it from?" "Someone who wants me to remember what I tried to forget." I read the next lines quietly, my lips barely moving. "You believed the reports. You believed the photos. You believed what they told you to see. But you never believed me. Look where it got us both." The words hit harder than any accusation, because he was right. I had believed the system, not the man. "Dad," Ethan said softly, "you're scaring me." I folded the letter, forcing my breath steady. "It's just old ghosts." But as I turned the page, something slipped out from inside the envelope. A photograph. Faded, but unmistakable. Michael, standing beside a young boy, maybe 10 years old. The same gray eyes as the man who brought me the letter. My pulse stopped. "Dad, who's that?" I whispered, almost to myself. "His son." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, shaking the house like a warning. I looked toward the door, the rain still falling, and realized something simple, terrifying, and true. If that man was who I thought he was, then the past hadn't just found me. It was walking back to my doorstep. The rain didn't stop all morning. It just kept whispering against the windows, like someone outside refused to leave. I sat with the letter, again tracing every word with my eyes until they blurred. Then I turned it over, and that's when I saw it. An address, written on the back, faded, almost hidden. North Cedar Road, Lot 14. Ethan leaned over my shoulder. "That's in the old district, right?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "Near the prison." He frowned. "Why would he send you there?" I didn't answer. The truth was, I already knew that's where it all began. I folded the letter, slipped it into my coat pocket, and grabbed the car keys. "Stay here," I told him. But Ethan shook his head. "No, Dad, not this time." Something in his tone stopped me. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man trying to understand the father he'd built on stories of righteousness. I nodded. "All right, but whatever we find, you don't judge it until you know everything." "Deal?" he said, though I could see the unease flicker behind his eyes. The drive was silent, except for the wipers scraping across the windshield. The world outside was gray hollow, a reflection of what I felt inside. For 20 years I'd told myself what I did was right. That Michael Dunn's death was the price of truth. But as I neared the address, that belief began to crumble like wet paper. Lot 14 turned out to be an abandoned gas station, long boarded up, half swallowed by weeds. The sign above the entrance still bore faint letters. Cedar Fuel Corps. Ethan parked the car. "This place looks dead. Everything tied to that case died," I murmured, "except the guilt." We stepped out into the drizzle. The smell of rust and old gasoline hung in the air. My shoes sank slightly into the mud as I approached the door. It was locked with a rusted chain, but someone had taped a small plastic envelope to the frame. Inside was a single photograph, a younger me standing beside two detectives, and behind us, a man in handcuffs. Michael Dunn. Ethan stared. Dad, that's you. Yeah, you were smiling. I couldn't look away from it. I thought I was saving someone that day. He studied me carefully. Were you? I hesitated. I don't know anymore. Under the photo was a scrap of paper, the same handwriting as the letter Justice never belonged to you. John, it was borrowed. Now, return it where it was taken. Ethan exhaled slowly. What does that even mean? I looked at the gas station again. It means there's something here I missed 20 years ago. We circled around the building, mud sucking at our shoes. A door in the back hung loosely broken. Inside, the darkness swallowed us. Ethan turned on his phone light. The beam cut through dust and cobwebs. The floor was littered with papers, old crates, and a typewriter that hadn't touched ink in gold. Then Ethan stopped. Dad, look! He pointed to a section of the floor where the wooden boards had been replaced with newer planks. Rough, uneven, fresh compared to the rest. I knelt down. The boards creaked under my weight. My hands trembled slightly as I pried one up with an old crowbar. Beneath it, wrapped in plastic, was a small metal box. Ethan whispered, "What is that?" I didn't know, but my heart was pounding, like it remembered before my mind did. The box was sealed tight. I forced it open. Inside were files, newspaper clippings, and a cassette tape. On top, a note: "Play me when you're ready to see what you refused to see." Ethan's voice broke the silence. "He left all this for you." "Maybe not for me," I said. "Maybe for whoever still believes in the truth." Outside, thunder cracked again, closer this time. The storm had found us. Ethan looked toward the door nervously. Should we listen to it now? I stared at the tape, the plastic gleaming under the light, old and fragile, like a voice that shouldn't exist anymore. "No," I said finally. "Not here." "Then where?" "Somewhere the ghosts can't reach us." We walked out, the box between us. But as I locked eyes with Ethan, under the flickering streetlight, I caught something behind him. A silhouette standing in the rain, watching from across the road. When I blinked, it was gone. The night wrapped itself around the house like a confession waiting to be heard. Ethan sat across from me at the table, the metal box between us, the cassette tape resting on a towel like some fragile relic. Neither of us spoke. The rain outside had turned into a steady hum, the kind that fills silence without mercy. Ethan broke it first. "We can still stop here, you know. Whatever this is, it's 20 years old. Maybe it's better left buried." I finished his sentence. He looked away. "You said..." Not me." I exhaled slowly. "The truth doesn't rot just because time does." I pulled out an old tape player from the drawer, something I hadn't used since before Ethan was born. The buttons were stiff, the metal cold. When I pressed play, the tape hissed for a moment, then crackled to life. A man's voice filled the room, soft, broken, John Miller. If you're hearing this, they told you I was dead. Ethan's eyes widened. I froze. The voice continued rasping through static. They said I confessed. That I killed that girl on Cedar Road. You wrote the report. You called it evidence. But what you never asked was why the evidence came to you so easily. The words hit like a pulse under my skin. I remembered every page, every photograph, every signature that carried my name. Ethan whispered, "Dad." What is he talking about? I didn't answer. The tape hissed again, as if the man on the other side of death was pausing to breathe. There was a man in your office the day before my trial. He offered you a deal, remember? A promotion in exchange for one signature. You thought it meant justice. It didn't. It meant silence. I clenched my jaw. My breath caught in my throat. Ethan's voice sharpened. What deal, Dad? The words tangled inside me. It wasn't what he thinks. Then what was it? It was a moment, I said quietly. One I've been paying for ever since. The tape went on. They told you I hanged myself in my cell. But that's not true. The night I died, someone came. He said he could make it quick. Said it would clean the books. I never saw his face. Only the badge. The static swelled, distorting his voice into something inhuman. Ethan stared at the player, as if it might suddenly bleed. Dad, what does he mean, badge? I forced myself to stay calm. He's saying it was an inside job. Then who? I looked at him. That's what we need to find out. The tape clicked again. John, I don't hate you. You were part of something bigger than you understood. But my son deserves to know who took his father from him. If he ever finds you, listen to him. Don't run. He's not me, but he carries my truth. The room fell silent. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Only the rain spoke. Ethan whispered, "His son. You mean the man who brought the letter?" "Yes. And he wants you to tell him what happened. He wants me to finish what I never started." Ethan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "So you're saying the man you trusted, the one who gave you the files back then, wasn't giving me evidence?" I said softly. "He was giving me permission to destroy someone." I stood and walked to the window. The street outside was dark, empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling someone was still there watching. Ethan came beside me. "What if he's still around, Dad? Whoever did this, he is," I said. "Men like that don't vanish. They just learn to live in shadows." The tape clicked again, a final sound almost like a heartbeat. Then one last line, faint, half swallowed by static. "Find the photograph, John. The one I left where it all began." The tape
to find him.
Ethan turned to me. Where it all began, I stared into the rain, my reflection fractured in the glass. Cedar Prison, I said quietly. Where he died. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating our faces. One haunted by guilt, the other by disbelief. Ethan took a step back, voice shaking. Dad, were you the reason he went to prison in the first place? I didn't answer. Because sometimes silence is the confession. By the time we reached Cedar Prison, the rain had turned to fog, thick, white, and almost human. The building rose from the mist like a scar that refused to heal. Every window was shattered, every gate rusted, but the air carried something alive. Like the walls still remembered the cries inside them. Ethan stepped out first, his flashlight slicing through the haze. You really worked here? Not here, I said quietly. But I watched a man walk through these gates for the last time. He looked back at me, and you wrote the words that sent him in. There was no answer to that, only the sound of wet gravel under our boots. We walked through the front yard, weeds taller than our knees, chain link fences bent like old bones. The main door was still chained, but the side entrance hung open, the hinges squealing as we pushed it. Inside, everything smelled of mold, rust, and memory. The beam of Ethan's light caught a sign above the hallway. Cell Block C, 998 Incident Wing. That's where he died, I murmured. Ethan hesitated. And that's where we were going. We stepped inside. The corridor swallowed the light, the ceiling dripping water in steady rhythm. Graffiti covered the walls. Names, curses, prayers. Each cell we passed was like an open mouth screaming into eternity. Ethan whispered, "What are we even looking for?" "A photograph," I said. "Something he left behind." He shook his head. "How do you know it's even real?" "Because guilt doesn't lie," I answered. "It just waits for you to stop pretending." Halfway down the hallway, my flashlight flickered across a door marked Evidence Room, Restricted Access. The handle was twisted, but still locked. Ethan handed me a piece of rebar. I forced it between the latch and pushed hard. The door snapped open, with a sound that echoed like a scream. Inside, dust floated like ghosts. Filing cabinets lined the walls. Labels half peeled. Case records. 1990 inmate. Property officer reports. Ethan went straight to a box marked Dunn Michael, deceased. He opened it carefully. Inside were old photo, a torn shirt, a rosary, and a sealed evidence bag containing a Polaroid. Ethan held it up under the light. "Dad, it's you again, with the same 2 detectives. But look, behind us in the corner of the photo was another man, face half hidden by shadow, a badge glinting on his belt. I whispered, "That's him." "Who, the man who gave me the files? The one who told me to write the report?" Ethan frowned. "What was his name?" "Captain Reed." I hadn't spoken that name in 20 years. It tasted like metal. Ethan turned the photo over. On the back, written in the same blue ink as the letter, "Find him before he finds you." A chill moved through the room, so real it made the hairs on my arms stand. Ethan swallowed hard. "You think he's still alive?" "He doesn't die," I said softly. "Men like him just change uniforms." A metallic clang echoed from somewhere down the corridor. We froze. Dad, Ethan whispered. I raised a hand for silence. Another sound, slow, deliberate footsteps. Too heavy to be the wind. "Someone else is here," I said. Ethan's eyes darted to the hallway. "We should go." But I was already moving instinct, pulling me toward the sound. We reached the intersection where two halls met. At the far end, under a flickering light, stood a man in a dark coat. His back was turned, but his posture was unmistakable. Straight, disciplined, unbent by time. "Reed." I called, my voice echoing through the empty prison. He didn't turn immediately. When he finally did, I saw his face older-lined but alive. His eyes met mine without surprise. "John," he said, calm as ever. "You finally opened it." Ethan took a step forward. "You're supposed to be..." "Dead." Reed interrupted with a faint smile. "Not yet. Some truths don't die that easily." He looked at me again, and for a heartbeat, it felt like 20 years collapsed into 1 second. "Still chasing ghosts." "Miller," he said. "Careful. Sometimes they chase back." Then he turned and disappeared down the corridor, his footsteps fading into the dark. Ethan whispered, "Dad, what does he want?" I stared after him, my pulse steady, but my soul trembling. "He wants to make sure the truth dies twice." We followed Reed's shadow out of the prison, our footsteps echoing against walls that still remembered every scream. The fog had thickened, curling around the gates like it didn't want us to leave. Reed was already halfway down the path, his black coat cutting through the white haze like a scar across memory. "Reed," I shouted. He stopped but didn't turn. "You should have left it buried." "John." Ethan moved beside me. "What the hell does that mean?" Reed finally turned his head slightly. "Your father once did something righteous, until he started asking why. Then he kept walking, disappearing into the mist like a ghost with unfinished business." Ethan grabbed my arm. "We can't just let him go, I know," I said. "But we can't follow him blind either." The fog pressed against us thick enough to taste. Somewhere behind the gate creaked shut with a long metallic groan, like the prison was swallowing itself again. We reached the car without speaking. Ethan slammed the door, frustrated. "Dad, you knew him. You worked with him." "Reed trained me," I said. He taught me what justice looked like before I realized he was drawing the picture upside down. Ethan frowned. So he framed Dunn? I looked out the window. Maybe, or maybe I did without knowing. The drive back was quiet, except for the sound of rain starting again. When we stopped at a gas station, Ethan leaned against the steering wheel, staring out into the dark. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. Did you ever doubt yourself back then?" "When you wrote that report?" I took a long breath. "Every day?" But doubt doesn't serve well in a room full of men who mistake obedience for honor. Ethan didn't answer. He just looked at me, not angry, not sad, just searching. That silence said more than any accusation. When we got home, I laid the photograph on the table. It was still damp from the fog, the ink bleeding faintly at the corners. I turned it under the lamp, letting the light crawl over every detail: the handcuffs, the badge, the shadowed face. Then something caught my eye. In the far corner of the photo, barely visible, was a reflection in the glass door behind us. Someone standing outside the interrogation room, taking the photo from behind the glass. "Ethan," I said quietly, "get me the magnifier." He brought it over. I leaned close, breath steady, hands shaking only slightly. The reflection was faint, but clear enough now. A man with a camera, not a detective, not Reed. I whispered, "That's impossible." "Who is it?" Ethan asked. I hesitated. "It's Mark." Ethan frowned. "Mark, as in my partner," I said. "The only one who stood up for me when the department turned cold." He sat back, processing. "You're saying the man who defended you took the picture that convicted Dunn looks like it." Then why I stared at the photo, heart sinking. Because someone told him to. I leaned back in the chair, memories flooding in Reed's voice, calm and certain. "Sometimes truth needs a little help, Miller." I remembered signing the file that night. I remembered Mark handing me the photo saying, "You did the right thing." And I remembered Michael Dunn shouting in the courtroom, "I didn't kill her. You think justice cares about men like me?" Ethan's voice brought me back. "Dad, if Mark's involved, does that mean Reed wasn't the only one?" I nodded slowly. Reed was the head. But Mark, he was the hand that held the pen. The rain picked up again, harder this time, slamming against the windows like it wanted in. I stood up and walked to the shelf where I kept old case files. Buried in the back was a thin folder marked 9098. Done. I pulled it out, laid it beside the photo. Inside, yellowed papers, faded signatures, and one document I'd never noticed before, a requisition form dated 2 days before Dunn's arrest, authorized by Captain Reed, co-signed by Detective Mark Ellis. Ethan leaned closer. "You've been living with this in your house all this time." I nodded, voice low. "The pet doesn't leave, Ethan. It waits." He looked at me, eyes dark with disbelief. "What are you going to do?" "Find Mark," I said. If he's still alive, he knows why this letter came now. Ethan hesitated. And if he's not, I looked at the rain-soaked window. My reflection split between shadow and light. Then someone wants me to think this is over when it's not. The lightning flashed again, casting the room in brief gold. And in that split second, I saw it, something else in the photo I'd missed before. On the table in front of Dunn's hands, a tiny cross-shaped keychain. Not evidence. Personal. And I'd seen it before hanging from Mark's car mirror. My breath stopped. Ethan saw my face. "Dad, what is it?" I whispered, proof. Of what I turned the photo toward him. Of who really killed that girl. Before he could speak, the front door creaked open. The wind carried a voice I hadn't heard in decades. "Still chasing ghosts." John. I turned toward the sound, and there, framed by the stormlight, stood Mark Ellis. Alive? He stood there in the doorway, soaked from the rain, breathing like someone who'd run from a ghost and found it waiting. His face was older, heavier, but the eyes, those eyes hadn't changed. Sharp, calculating, the kind that measured the weight of truth before deciding if it was worth speaking. Mark Weiss said quietly, "You're supposed to be dead." He smirked. "So are half the people in that file cabinet, John. But you and I both know death's just paperwork." Ethan stepped forward, jaw tight. "Who are you?" Mark glanced at him. "Your father's conscience, or what's left of it." "Watch your mouth," Ethan said, voice low. Mark raised a hand, almost amused. "Relax, kid. You'll get your truth soon enough. But you might wish you hadn't." I gestured toward the chair. "Sit down." He didn't move. "No, I think I'll stand. Easier to leave that way." "You came this far," I said. "You might as well finish it." Mark's jaw flexed. He stared at the photograph on the table, the same one that had started this unraveling. "I knew you'd find it eventually." "You took it," I said. "Yeah, why?" "Because Reed told me to. And because I owed him." The words hit like a hammer. You owed him. After what he did, Mark's expression darkened. "You think you know what he did? You don't. You were the face of his justice. I was just the hand that signed your name when you couldn't stomach it." Ethan frowned. "What are you talking about?" Mark's gaze flicked to him. "Your father was supposed to testify against Dunn. Reed didn't want that too many eyes, too much chance for toot. So I signed it instead. Same signature. Same outcome. Reed called it efficiency." My heart dropped into a pit that had no bottom. "You forged my report?" He nodded once. "Reed said it would save you. You were already questioning the evidence. He said if the chain of command broke, they'd come for you next." "And you believed him?" I whispered. I wanted to. For a long time, no one spoke. Only the rain filled the room, relentless, steady, like the world refused to let us hide. Ethan finally broke the silence. "So, you're saying Dad wasn't the one who sent Dunn to prison?" Mark hesitated. Not exactly. Then who was... He looked at me. All of us. I felt my knees weaken. You're lying? No, Mark said. I'm tired of lying. Dunn was framed because Reed needed a face for the city to hate. You gave him one. I made it legal. Reed made it permanent. Ethan whispered, Permanent? You mean? Mark nodded. He killed him. The room went still. The thunder outside didn't even seem to reach us. I stared at the man I once called my brother. You watched him die? No, Mark said. I walked away before it happened. That's how Reed knew I wouldn't talk. I clenched my fist. And now you're here because Mark's voice softened. Because someone sent me the same letter you got. But mine came with a message. What message? It's your turn to tell the truth. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope identical to mine, stained from the rain. Inside was another photograph, not of the crime scene, but of Reed standing outside the prison 20 years ago. In his hand was the same cross-shaped keychain I'd seen in the earlier photo. Ethan leaned closer. That keychain, I know, I said. Mark's eyes flickered. He took it off my desk the night before Dunn died. That's how I knew he was going to make it look like me. I exhaled shakily. He framed you too. Reed didn't frame people, Mark said bitterly. He built cages and let the world fill them. Ethan looked at between us, confusion breaking into anger. So what now? You both dig up ghosts and hope they apologize. Mark's eyes softened. You don't understand, kid. This isn't about apologies. It's about survival. Reed's cleaning house, and you two are next. Lightning flashed, illuminating his face. For the first time, I saw fear there. Real trembling fear. I stepped closer. You expect me to believe you. After 20 years of silence. He met my gaze. I didn't come for forgiveness, John. I came for help. Because I think he's still watching us. Ethan turned toward the window and froze. Dad, someone's outside. Through the rain-blurred glass, a dark figure stood by the streetlight, motionless, just watching. Mark's voice dropped to a whisper. Told you. He never stopped. The house was silent, except for the hum of the storm outside. Mark's blood still clung to my sleeves, dark against the pale fabric. Ethan sat by the window, staring at nothing, his eyes red from shock. Neither of us had spoken since the gunfire. Only the small flash drive between my fingers seemed alive, a sliver of truth that pulsed with quiet menace. Dad, Ethan said finally, his voice barely holding steady. We should call someone. The police. I shook my head. Reed is the police. You think a man like that ever lost his reach? He looked at me, searching for something to hold on to. Then, what do we do? I stared at the drive. We open it. I slid it into the laptop. The screen blinked to the drive's icon, appearing like a small wound reopening. A single file. Grace Bauer. Read file. Barney, Ethan whispered. Grace, the victim. I nodded, but something in me twisted. Why name it like that? Why final? I double-clicked. The video flickered to life. At first, nothing but static. Then a dimly lit office appeared. The camera was fixed on a man sitting behind a desk, cigarette smoke curling in slow motion. Reed. 20 years younger, but those eyes cold. Calculated were the same. He stared straight into the lens. If you're watching this, he said calmly, then I've already lost control of the story. My breath caught. Ethan leaned forward. Reed continued, voice even deliberate. Justice is a fragile thing, John. It doesn't live in courtrooms or files. It lives in belief. And belief can be rewritten. He reached for something on the desk, a photograph of a young woman. Grace. She thought she could destroy what I built. She didn't understand that I wasn't protecting myself. I was protecting the order. The world doesn't survive the truth. It survives the version of it people can sleep with, Ethan whispered. He's in... No, I said softly. He's convinced. Reed's tone shifted lower now. You wanted to believe you were clean, John. But the minute you signed that report, you became part of me. You carried my name in your silence. You called it justice because it sounded better than obedience. I felt my throat tighten. He leaned close to the camera. Do you know what Grace said before she died? She said, you can't erase a life with paperwork. But she was wrong. Paperwork built this city. The screen crackled, then cut to another scene, a security feed from the prison hallway. 2 guards dragging a man, and the time stamp the night of his supposed suicide. A voice off camera reads said, make it clean. Ethan turned away, shaking. Dad, turn it off. But I couldn't. I was frozen in front of it, watching my own sins replayed by someone else's hands. Then suddenly, the video cut again, not to Reed, but to Grace herself. She sat in the same office, eyes swollen from crying, voice trembling. If my father sees this, please understand he's not the man the world thinks he is. He's... The screen glitched. A loud bang echoed. The image froze mid-scream. Static swallowed the room. Ethan pressed his palms against his temples. Oh my God, I whispered. He recorded it. All of it. But something about the framing caught my eye, the way the video ended, the faint reflection in the glass door behind Grace. A silhouette, broad shoulders, a familiar outline. Dad, Ethan said, my pulse slowed. That's me. Ethan blinked. What? In the reflection. I was there that night. That's impossible. You said I didn't remember. But maybe I never wanted to. The video resumed on its own screen, fading to black before words appeared. John Miller, if you're still alive, remember what silence costs. Then another line followed beneath it, one that froze the air in my lungs. This isn't for you. It's for him. I stared at the text. Ethan's voice trembled. For who? I turned toward him slowly. The glow from the laptop painted his face in cold light. For you, I whispered. What? Because that's when I understood. The letter, the photographs, the drive, none of it was meant to destroy me. It was meant to teach him. The video cut once more. Reed's face reappeared older now, almost recent. Ethan Miller, he said softly, you've inherited your father's name, but not his truth. Come find me, and I'll give you the justice he never could. The screen went black. Ethan stared at it, breath shallow. He knows me. I shut the laptop slowly. He's been waiting for you. Lightning flashed outside, filling the room with blinding white. For a second, I saw our reflections on the dark window, father and son haunted by the same ghost. And somewhere beyond that, glass in the distance, the outline of a car idling under the rain. The house was silent, except for the hum of the storm outside. Mark's blood still clung to my sleeves, dark against the pale fabric. Ethan sat by the window, staring at nothing, his eyes red from shock. Neither of us had spoken since the gunfire. Only the small flash drive between my fingers seemed alive, a sliver of truth that pulsed with quiet menace. Dad, Ethan said finally, his voice barely holding steady. We should call someone. The police. I shook my head. Reed is the police. You think a man like that ever lost his reach? He looked at me, searching for something to hold on to. Then what do we do? I stared at the drive. We open it. I slid it into the laptop. The screen blinked, the drive's icon appearing like a small wound reopening. A single file. Grace, readfinal.move. Ethan whispered, Grace, the victim. I nodded, but something in me twisted. Why name it like that? Why final? I double-clicked. The video flickered to life. At first, nothing but static. Then a dimly lit office appeared. The camera was fixed on a man sitting behind a desk, cigarette smoke curling in slow motion. Reed. 20 years younger, but those eyes cold, calculated were the same. He stared straight into the lens. If you're watching this, he said calmly, then I've already lost control of the story. My breath caught. Ethan leaned forward. Reed continued, voice even deliberate. Justice is a fragile thing, John. It doesn't live in courtrooms or files. It lives in belief, and belief can be rewritten. He reached for something on the desk, a photograph of a young woman. Grace. She thought she could destroy what I built. She didn't understand that I wasn't protecting myself. I was protecting the order. The world doesn't survive the truth. It survives the version of it people can sleep with, Ethan whispered. He's insane. No, I said softly. He's convinced. Reed's tone shifted lower now. You wanted to believe you were clean, John. But the minute you signed that report, you became part of me. You carried my name in your silence. You called it justice because it sounded better than obedience. I felt my throat tighten. He leaned closer to the camera. Do you know what Grace said before she died? She said, you can't erase a life with paperwork. But she was wrong. Paperwork built this city. The screen crackled, then cut to another scene, a security feed from the prison hallway. 2 guards dragging a man. Done. The time stamp the night of his supposed suicide. A voice off camera reads said, make it clean. Ethan turned away shaking. Dad, turn it off. But I couldn't. I was frozen in front of it, watching my own sins replayed by someone else's hands. Then suddenly, the video cut again, not to Reed, but to Grace herself. She sat in the same office, eyes swollen from crying, voice trembling. If my father sees this, please understand he's not the man the world thinks he is. He's... The screen glitched. A loud bang echoed. The image froze, mid-scream. Static swallowed the room. Ethan pressed his palms against his temples. Oh my God, I whispered. He recorded it. All of it. But something about the framing caught my eye, the way the video ended, the faint reflection in the glass door behind Grace. A silhouette, broad shoulders, a familiar outline. Dad, Ethan said, my pulse slowed. That's me. Ethan blinked. What? In the reflection, I was there that night. That's impossible. You said I didn't remember. But maybe I never wanted to. The video resumed on its own screen, fading to black before words appeared. John Miller, if you're still alive, remember what silence costs. Then another line followed beneath it, one that froze the air in my lungs. This isn't for you, it's for him. I stared at the text. Ethan's voice trembled. For who? I turned toward him slowly. The glow from the laptop painted his face in cold light. For you, I whispered, because that's when I understood. The letter, the photographs, the drive, none of it was meant to destroy me. It was meant to teach him. The video cut once more. Reed's face reappeared, older now, almost recent. Ethan Miller, he said softly. You've inherited your father's name, but not his truth. Come find me, and I'll give you the justice he never could. The screen went black. Ethan stared at it, breath shallow. He knows me. I shut the laptop slowly. He's been waiting for you. Lightning flashed outside, filling the room with blinding white. For a second, I saw our reflections on the dark window, father and son, haunted by the same ghost. And somewhere beyond that, glass in the distance, the outline of a car idling under the rain. The rain had stopped, but the world still sounded wet, as if every surface remembered it. Ethan stood in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder, the laptop under his arm. He hadn't said a word since the video ended. "Where are you going?" I asked. He didn't look back. "You already know." "Ethan, listen to me." "No, you listen." He turned then, eyes raw. "All my life, you told me truth matters more than comfort. Now that it's staring you in the face, you want to hide. You can't, Dad. Not anymore." His voice cracked on the last word. I took a step closer. "You think I want to hide? I've been living inside that lie for 20 years. I'm trying to keep you from being swallowed by it. Maybe that's the only way to end it." He walked past me toward the garage. I caught his arm. "You don't understand what Reed is capable of. He already knows who I am. That's why you can't go." He pulled free. "That's exactly why I have to." The echo of his footsteps faded down the hall, leaving the house hollow. For a moment, I just stood there, surrounded by the ghosts of every decision I'd ever made. Then I grabbed my coat and followed him. Outside, dawn was bleeding into the clouds, turning the fog a dull gold. Ethan was already in the car, engine running. I slid into the passenger seat without a word. He shot me a quick glance. "You're not stopping me." "I tried stopping a man once," I said. "It killed him. I'm not making that mistake again." He looked forward, jaw set. "Then don't get in my way." The road to Reed's estate wound through the hills like an old scar. The rain had carved rivers along the shoulders. Trees leaned inward, whispering things they shouldn't know. Neither of us spoke. Somewhere along the drive, the quiet turned from anger to understanding, the kind that hurts more than shouting. When we reached the gate, the guard booth was empty, the iron bars left open as if someone had been expecting us. Ethan parked. "He wants us to come in." I nodded. "That's what worries me." We walked up the long path toward the house, an old brick mansion that looked less like a home and more like a verdict. The front door was ajar. Ethan pushed it open and we stepped into silence. The air smelled of dust and burnt tobacco. On the table in the foyer lay a single envelope, addressed in blue ink, for Ethan Miller. He picked it up, fingers trembling. Inside was a short note, handwritten. He read it aloud. "A son inherits more than his father's name. He inherits his unfinished battles. Come to the courtroom downstairs, Ethan. Let the truth decide which of us deserves the guilt." Ethan looked at me. "He's toying with us." "No," I said. "He's staging the end." We descended the staircase to the basement. The lights flickered as we entered a vast underground chamber, half archive, half tomb. At the center stood an old wooden table. Paper spread across it and behind it. Reed. Alive. Calm. Waiting. He smiled faintly. "John, Ethan, welcome to the truth." Ethan stepped forward. "You killed her." Reed didn't flinch. Grace was weak. She thought exposing corruption would cleanse it. But rot needs structure, son. Without order, you get chaos. "I'm not your son," Ethan hissed. Reed's gaze sharpened. "Maybe not by blood, but you carry the same hunger to make sense of a world that never will." I moved closer. "It's over, Reed." He shook his head slowly. "No, John. It's just fair now. You had your turn 20 years ago. Now it's mine." He reached into his coat and placed a small recorder on the table. "Tell him," he said softly. "Tell your boy what really happened that night." My chest tightened. Ethan looked at me confused. "Dad, what is he talking about?" Reed leaned forward. "You were there when Grace died, weren't you, John?" I froze. The air in my lungs turned to iron. Ethan's eyes widened. "That's not true." Reed smiled. "He was there. He didn't pull the trigger, but he didn't stop it either." My knees felt weak. "I tried no," Reed said quietly. "You hesitated. And hesitation is just another kind of permission." The words hit harder than a bullet. Ethan's voice trembled. I turned to him, tears burning at the edges of my vision. "It's true. I was there. I saw her fall. I froze. I told myself it was justice, but I knew it was fear." Reed leaned back, satisfied. "See, boy, truth doesn't set you free. It ruins you." Ethan stared at me, the distance between us larger than the room itself. "Then maybe ruin is what we need." He turned toward Reed. "You wanted a trial. You've got one." Reed's smile faded. "Be careful what you wish for." He pressed a button on the recorder. A red light blinked, and the sound of sirens began to rise outside. The wail of sirens grew until it seemed to live inside the walls. Blue light pulsed through the narrow basement windows, washing everything, the papers, the dust, our faces, in the same accusing color. Reed didn't move. He just watched the glow flicker across Ethan's trembling hands. "They're coming for you," he said quietly. "Eyes on me." I made sure the evidence points that way. I stared at the recorder's red light. "You never stopped writing the story, did you?" He smiled. "Writers never do." Ethan stepped between us. "You framed him once. You're not doing it again." Reed's tone softened, almost paternal. "You're a clever boy. If you tell them your father confessed, they'll let you walk. You'll have a future. Don't throw it away for a man who already lost his." Ethan looked at me, really looked. and I saw the battle in his eyes, blood against belief. I said, "Whatever you do, son, make sure it's your truth, not his." The footsteps reached the stairs above. Reed leaned closer. "You know what justice is, Ethan. It's whoever survives long enough to explain." The door at the top burst open. Shouts. Boots on concrete. Reed reached for the recorder, but Ethan was faster. He grabbed it and smashed it against the table. The device shattered, the red light dying with a soft click. Reed's whack finally cracked. "You stupid quiet!" Ethan snapped. Officers poured in, guns raised. For one impossible second, everyone froze. Reed's calm returned instantly. He lifted his hands. "There," he said smoothly, "that's the man you want, John Miller. The confessor." An officer hesitated. "Which one?" Reed pointed straight at me. "The murderer." I could have spoken. I could have begged them to listen. But I saw Ethan's face, pale, furious, alive. And I understood what this ending required. I stepped forward, slowly raising my hands. "It's true," I said. "It's all true." Ethan's voice broke. "Dad, don't..." I met his eyes. "Some debts, son, don't get paid with truth. Only with silence." Two officers grabbed me, forced me to my knees. Reed watched the ghost of victory curving his lips. Then Ethan moved. He pulled the flash drive from his pocket, the one Mark had given us, and tossed it toward the officers. It clattered across the floor. "You want evidence?" he shouted. "Play that." Reed's smile died. "What have you done?" Ethan glared at him. "Given them your story, not mine." One officer retrieved the drive, plugged it into a tablet. Within seconds, Reed's own video appeared. The confession, the threats, Grace's final scream. The room changed temperature. The officers turned their weapons from me to him. Reed lunged for the table, but Ethan shoved him back. They struggled. Reed's strength failed first. He fell against the wall, gasping. "You think truth saves you," he hissed. "No," Ethan said. "It saves her." Outside, the sirens quieted. The world seemed to breathe again. They led Reed away in handcuffs. As he passed me, he leaned close enough for only me to hear. "You didn't win," he whispered. "You just ended." I watched him disappear up the stairs, swallowed by the stormlight. Ethan dropped to a chair, shaking. "Dad." I knelt beside him. "You did what I couldn't. You finished it." His eyes filled. "But they'll still think you. It doesn't matter what they think. It matters what you become after this." He swallowed hard. "What will you do now?" I looked toward the stairwell, where daylight began to seep through the cracks. "Tell them what's necessary. Nothing more." When the officers came back, I signed every page they gave me. Each signature felt lighter than the last, as if confession once spoken carried its own mercy. Hours later, they let Ethan walk free. As they led me out in cuffs, he called after me, "Dad." I turned. He said, "Was it worth it?" I smiled faintly. Truth always is, even when it ruins you. They call this place a holding center, but it's quiet enough to think. The nights smell of metal and rain. Sometimes I imagine Grace's voice, not screaming this time, just whispering, "You remembered." Ethan writes me every week. His letters don't ask for explanations. They talk about rebuilding, about helping the families Reed destroyed. Maybe that's what justice really looks like. Someone else choosing to live right where you stopped. And me, I sit here, listening to the rain against the bars, and finally understand what Dunn meant when he wrote from his grave. Truth doesn't die. It just waits for someone brave enough to dig it up. I was 20 years too late, but my son wasn't.